Hi friends, Mindy here. I am going to show you today how I created this stained glass window effect here using the stencil that just released from Bythewell4God, their most recent stencil with their kit, and some really easy, simple things. So this is the first one that I did, and I posted a picture of it. And so I thought I would just go ahead and do a little video here showing how I did this. So the first thing that I did is I got this is just plain black cardstock, and you'll need a couple of palette knives, and this is the stencil that I was talking about from Bythewell4God, and some modeling paste. Now I'm using light and fluffy modeling paste from Crafter's Workshop today. The one that I did previously, I used this one from Liquitex, which is light modeling paste. You want a light modeling paste, not a heavy one, because I'm doing this on paper, it's going to be, you want it to be a little bit flexible, and the light modeling paste is better for doing that. These are the embossing powders that I'm going to use. I don't have a ton of colors in embossing powders right now, so I'm just pulling out what I have, and a couple of those are kind of neon colors, but I have a way to kind of dull that down just a little bit. But part of that just helps because I'm going to be doing it on this black paper, and I'm doing that because I really want those black lines in between there to make this really look like stained glass. So the first thing that you're going to do is take your modeling paste. Again, this is the light and fluffy from Crafter's Workshop, and my palette knife here. And I'm loading it up on the back of the palette knife instead of just scooping it out. It just makes it easier. So I just have it loaded up on the back of my little spatula here, and I'm just going to very carefully spread it around, and I'm being very careful to keep my stencil held down really tight, and I'm spreading a nice thin even coat from top to bottom. Just be careful that you don't lift up pieces or parts of the stencil as you're spreading around, which I actually did up here in this corner, but so a little bit of paste got underneath there, but it'll be okay. I'll show you how I fix it later. So I'm just getting some more. I just want to get a nice even coat, not too thick. I mean, you could do it as thick as you want. It's just the thicker it is, the longer it's going to take to dry. So, and you're going to have to let it sit for a little bit. So I am just going to pull up the stencil now, and you can see how that's going to look. One thing when you're working with modeling paste is you want to right away wash off your stencil. You don't want it drying on your stencil because it will ruin your stencil. And this part here I have sped up, but I'm basically just taking a little palette knife, and I'm just dropping little pieces. You could do this with your fingers if you want, just kind of spreading it around, kind of mixing the colors together. The colors obviously won't blend together, but you can get the particles to mix together a little bit, so you kind of get a more of a variegated look. So I'm using some blues and purple down here in the sky part of this stencil, and I'm just going back and forth between all of the three colors here, just separating them, trying to block off the sun so I don't get some blue up in the little sun part up there, which it wouldn't bother me if I did, honestly. This is not going to be a perfect result anyway. There's a little bit of imperfections in it, but that's okay. I kind of love how this turned out. And so down here, I've got all the blues in with a little bit of purple, and now I'm going in with this really bright yellow, and I'm just concentrating it kind of where the sun is, and then going just a little bit, kind of just sprinkling it up toward the top. And then I'm going to come in with this orange color and do the same thing with more concentration here at the sun, and then less of it up at the top. And again, these are fluorescent colors, because that's just the embossing powder that I have. So I'm now going to just mix a lot of this pink over the top of all of that and mix it in with there, so that it will kind of, it won't seem like they're, super bright fluorescent colors when it's finished. So it'll still be bright, obviously, but it's not going to be quite as bad as if I had just covered the whole thing in that really bright yellow. So again, I'm just going back and forth and sprinkling different colors in different places, just making sure that all of the modeling paste is covered. I want to make, otherwise you're going to have white showing through. So now I'm just leaving it to dry. And you'll know when it's dry when it's no longer cool to the touch. Like if you touch it from the back side of the paper, it will not feel cool. And in fact, you can honestly kind of see, because this is just really thin paper, you can actually kind of see when it's wet and then when it's dry. So here I have a piece of scratch paper and I'm just collecting all of this excess embossing powder. Ordinarily, when you emboss something, you know, if you're just doing one color, you can put it back into the original container. Obviously, I can't do that with this because they're all mixed together, but I am actually going to save that embossing powder. And here I'm just taking a craft pick and kind of brushing out some of those areas before I heat emboss this, just to kind of get rid of some of those places where it's stuck a little where I didn't want it. So here I'm just gonna save, I have a bag that I saved from the last time I did this, and I'm just gonna save all this embossing powder, and I will probably come back and do another one of these using this mix just to see what it, you know, how it turns out, just because experimenting with this kind of stuff is fun, you can see. So it's just all mixed together in this bag, and I will do something with that at some point. But for now, I'm just taking a Swiffer, one of the Swiffer dusters that like for the floor, and they're really good for cleaning up embossing powders and glitter and all that because they have that staticky element to them. So I have pulled out my embossing gun and I'm heating it up. I heated it up before I actually took it to my paper. It's really important you get it nice and hot before you start embossing. And you can use like a heat it tool. I know Ranger has one of those, but they don't get as hot as an actual embossing gun. So just know that that's going to take you a little bit longer. And this is kind of a balancing act between getting it hot enough to melt the embossing powder and not overheating it to make where you make it bubble up. This is another reason why you want to make sure that your embossing or your texture paste or your modeling paste is dry, because if it's not, you run the risk of that that modeling paste bubbling, which is a look, and it's pretty cool actually, but for this particular look, that's just not what I'm going for, because I want to kind of get this to look like stained glass. So you can't really tell on camera here very well. I was trying to get a close-up shot about how it looks like when it's melting, but you can see it in person. You'll see when it's melted. And so now with everything warm, I'm just kind of pressing down on the paper. In fact, I'm going to heat up the back side of this paper, and I'm just going to kind of press everything down. That will help flatten out this paper. It did get a little bit warped just from adding the moisture of the modeling paste, but it really wasn't too bad. And here I'm just using a craft pick again to kind of clean up that edge where I got a little modeling paste where I didn't want it. And you can just scratch it out because the paper behind it is black. So now I'm just trimming down this image here just to kind of clean up the edges where I went outside of the stencil, and to trim it down. I'll trim it down a little bit more when I go to actually use it. And you can see this is how it looks when it is finished, and there's next to the one that I made previously. So anyway, if you like this video, I would appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and until next time, bye-bye.